of the media. Welcome to the PVP Weekly Press Conference. The GS was out of town yesterday, and today he's back. Let me welcome you to this press conference. And the GS will be reading a statement, after which we'll be taking questions. GS?
Yeah. Morning once again, everyone. The statement reads as follows. The People's Progressive Party condemns the Granger administration in general and the Minister of Communities in particular for their total and complete disrespect for the legal procedures governing the relationship between the Minister of Communities and the newly elected neighborhood democratic councils. In this respect, the withholding of ministerial approval for budgets submitted by the NDCs is a blatant manifestation of the arrogant and spiteful behavior of the minister to punish the people in those NDCs controlled by the PPPC. The NDCs are being financially stifled by the APNU-AFC coalition administration, thus preventing them from executing their functions in the interest of the people who elected the council members to administer the affairs of their respective local authority areas. Residents in the affected NDCs are urgently awaiting the cleaning of trenches and canals, works to be done to internal roads, environmental sanitation, maintenance issues, and other civil works are badly needed in these communities. The problem is further compounded by the failure of GECOM and the minister to discharge their respective responsibilities to bring an end to the deadlock affecting the 6 local authority areas. In these communities, residents are up in arms against the government and GECOM for refusing to find a solution to the prevailing situation. The PPP, for its part, has sought to enter into negotiations with the Ministry of the Presidency with a view to resolving the situation. Many of the NDCs have savings already committed to be spent on public works and or community projects in their respective communities. Residents in the NDCs voted for their elected representatives to improve, as a matter of urgency, their environmental and infrastructural surroundings, as was promised during the campaign in the run-up to the local government elections. 3 months after the local government elections, from all appearances, the political rhetoric emanating from the APNU-AFC about, quote, completing the circle of democratic governance in Guyana, end of quote, and being unable to, quote, deliver something that the people of the country have craved for 2 years, for 2 decades, end of quote, have turned out to be meaningless and self-fulfilling prophecies. The APNU-AFC, contrary to all its high-sounding rhetoric, is clearly obstructing progress in the communities where they are local authority bodies controlled by PPPC councillors. Moreover, it has now become obvious to all that the Granger administration has embarked on a studied policy of frustrating the activities of the PPPC-controlled NDCs and the APNU so-called democratic renewal of the lives of the newly elected councils has been made a mockery by withholding ministerial approval for spending monies already in the possession of the NDCs. The NDCs will never be able to, quote, work for the good of their communities, end of quote, when in actuality, the same APNU AFC who spouted these words continues to pursue policies to the contrary, effectively blocking the development of these communities. In this respect, it is anybody's guess when disbursement of monies to the NDCs will take place, having regard to the fact that Budget 2016 was approved since February of the same year. Government that listens to the people must be a central principle of Guyanese democracy. However, local democracy is being eroded by a handful of self-serving individuals who strut the corridors of power at the Ministry of the Presidency, and a larger number of either spiteful or bullisome ministers and advisors who are given a free rein to ride roughshod over the communities supportive of the PPPC. Thank you.
There you are, there. Statement. We'll be the first to ask question. Adam, I see you making a lot of notes there.
Making some notes.
Yes, let's have now.
Can you say how many NDCs you're talking about?
Well, first of all, we're talking about the 6 NDCs and all of the NDCs that are controlled by the PPPC. I think there are 40-something of them.
Okay,
48.
and
Yeah, 48 of those NDCs.
those 6 NDCs you talked about, was it the runoff elections you're speaking about?
Yeah, that were recently elected.
Can you say the overseer, because the last time we were here, the GCOM commissioner said the overseers are supposed to rank the GCOM for this runoff elections. Can you
All that has been done. It's now waiting ministerial approval, but this man Bulkan is just sitting on, I don't know what. I don't want to call what Ramjatan is famous for saying, hall or whatever.
Sir, many of these NDCs
Mhm.
submit, we call audited statements of what went on for years. And if I remember rightly, one of the things that were being asked is, look, let me see some of your accounts we've been doing and all of that before I can give you money, and that hasn't been done. Have you been telling your people, look, get your accounts in order, present it so there could be no excuse?
May I ask who is it that's been asking for these things?
To the best of my knowledge, the Ministry of Communities were asking that these NDCs produce their accounts so you could see how expenditure was going, how government funds were being spent, how their funds were being spent, so that the whole funding program could continue.
Well, I can't comment on hearsay. That seems to me to be what was heard by someone. You see, as I've said over and over these press conferences, you know, I need to see these things in writing from the hand of the minister. I don't recall seeing from any of our newly elected or re-elected, if you want to call it that, persons who were there before but are now back in some of these NDCs, any documentation in the form of a letter from the permanent secretary acting of that particular ministry, Ms. Abina Moore, asking for those, such a report to be submitted. But I think it would be legally wrong for you to be holding up monies that are already in the hands of these NDCs for works to be done in the NDCs on the basis of some spurious claim that they need to submit something to them. I mean, what if they've already submitted? What if they've already submitted? That takes us into the realm of speculation.
But did your party ever ask these people to submit statement of accounts.
We would not ask them to do so. On what basis would we ask them to do that? We're not the government.
When
We're
you
not the
were in
government.
When you were in government, did they
When,
do-
listen, when we were in government, nothing of the sort was ever asked as far as I could recall as a member cabinet. But the question presupposes, as is the flavor of the day in these times, that there was some corruption taking place. So I'm not going to venture into that, situation, because I noticed the other day when I spoke about something, continues, spinning it all over the place that I said that we were involved in some hanky-panky business before, and now I'm saying that you shouldn't do what we shouldn't do, or the present administration shouldn't do what we used to do. You know what I'm talking
Yeah, but
about?
you did say that.
I never said that. I never said that. So don't bring that to me.
Yeah, Jess, you mentioned maintenance and internal roads having to be done in Region 3 in particular. I've spoken to a few of the NC councillors, and their concern is that while they're waiting for the money,
Mhm.
the condition of roads is deteriorating, and it will require increased allocations for
Mhm.
repairs
But-
to be
but-
done. Will the PP support probably an increased allocation for the areas?
That is exactly what is going to happen. No money is being released, and I saw Bolkan the other day made a flash in the pan statement, as I would describe it, saying that they're going to get money soon. Now, whether he's talking about money that is in the budget for the NDCs, or whether he's talking about money that is a rollover from what was in the NDCs already, I don't know what is it he's talking about. And then I saw Mr. Granger yesterday speaking about budget coming in December. So what's going to happen? You'll have a crisis in one, on the other hand, non-spending and spending. Because on the one hand, they're holding up money that is for development. On the other hand, they're spending money that is not for development, just for the good life of a few.
A follow-up, sir. On the same issue of budgets, it's not just the NDCs, but the regions also. Some of the regions are complaining, the regions that were won by the PP at the 2015 elections, they're complaining that the monies that they have to spend are, because of crashes with the REOs, they can't spend all of the money, so that they're concerned that when 2017 budget comes, they'll get lesser allocations. Will an argument or something be put forward by PP to say, well, okay, look, that there were circumstances that prevented spending of the money, but the regions do deserve either an increase or the same allocation as 2016?
Well, take the case of Region 5, where you have these unruly horses at every meeting, preventing the council from meeting and making decisions. We have already said that if at any time we find REOs or overseers spending money that has not been approved either at the NDC level or the RDC level, they ought to be surcharged. They ought to be surcharged. And we will be keeping a watchful eye on that process, you see, in order to ensure that, if these things happen, then they have to be made to account for it. That's one dimension of the situation. The other dimension of the situation has to do with, in many NDCs, spending is very slow. Some of the REOs are totally incompetent, like Mr. Ramaya. And then you have, I'm free to say so. I see people watching as though they're surprising by me saying so. I find Mr. Ramaya totally incompetent. He ought not to be there. He ought to be fired. Then you have Mr. Hopkinson on the Escribo, another incompetent individual. You see? These people ought to be fired. Then you have another one also in Region 5. You see? So I see they're shaking up the GRA. I think they ought to do some shaking up in the among the REOs too, because we're hearing all these platitudes from the highest forum in the land. I don't mean the parliament. Sometimes in the parliament, yes, during budget debate, but sometimes from the ministers in the office of the presidency or the ministry of the presidency, you know, that we need to work together, you know, development in the municipalities and developments in the RDCs and the NDCs should not be, you know, held up and so forth. But while Mr. Granger is, you know, expressing these platitudes, his satraps on the ground are doing something totally different, and he's not doing anything about them. He's not doing anything about them. Carl Joseph, why doesn't he deal with Carl Joseph? Throw a lasso around her and rope her in.
Sir, for the NDCs, not the regional, the RDC responsible for the NDCs. So the RDCs would have an allocation that they would give to the
The RDC is responsible for the NDCs? You sure about that?
Well, that's the old principle.
No. I'm not so sure about that, Adam. I'm not so sure about that the RDC is responsible for the NDCs. Look, these are two bodies that are elected under two different elections, right? They have their own budgets. They have their own way of collecting, you know, revenues. So how could the NDC be accountable to the RDC?
Let me give you an example.
Go ahead. I'm not a former chairman of RDC here.
BV, for example, started a program of installing streetlights. But before they could have attempted this NDC and BV, what with an 8th of May movement, I don't remember the name, could have installed the streetlights with program. It had to consult with the RDC to get permission because somebody had to pay for the lights. The RDC had to approve that. The payment, RDC had to negotiate with GPL and all of that. Similarly, when there are certain RDC meetings, members of the NDC go to those meetings because the regional body is supposed to be the umbrella organization for that entire region. That would include the NDC.
Yeah, but it doesn't follow because the NDC must consult with the RDC in respect to the installation of street lights or even certain roads within the RDC that the NDC subordinate to the RDC. It doesn't follow. It has to do a lot with jurisdictional matters that fall outside of the NDC, that are NDC plus, so to speak. Am I correct?
That's right, Adam. The NDC falls solely under the central ministry. And the NDC, where you say the NDC has right to, they could go to GPL and negotiate for these streetlights. They could go to Ministry of Public Works like any other entity. Before the RDC had some oversight, but that is not so anymore. It falls directly under the Ministry of Communities, and they have direct controls. They appoint overseers and things like that, workers.
Mr. Roy Reddish, William Rallies. And with respect to Parkland and Georgetown,
We reached there yet, you know.
But we still have a statement about these
We can come to,
NDC
we got to drive first
subvention,
before we park.
and this is subvention and budget.
We're still driving on this one, on this track.
Any other question on the statement?
We will have a place to park, don't worry.
Can you say where the negotiations are, the PP negotiations with Ministry of Presidency on the
Yeah, I understand. Yeah, thank you. I understand. Gail had been in touch with Miss. No, I won't call her by her first name. Miss Amna Ali. And maybe it would be better for Gail at some point in time to say what came out of the conversation. But I know they have been in touch with each other in order to move the process forward. Nothing has happened since the second conversation, and so we, you know, the ball is in the court of the Ministry of the Presidency, where Amna Ali is comfortably ensconced to reply to Madam Gail Teixeira.
Are you optimistic that we'll have a different outcome given the last, the way the last negotiation ended?
I am not so, I would say I'm guardedly optimistic.
Any other questions on the statement?
All right?
Dennis?
Mr. Roy, with respect to
Mhm.
parking in Georgetown, to what extent do you support parking lots as opposed to parking meters?
Parking lots as opposed to parking meters. We don't support any of the two, so long as there are no consultations with the people. Any one of the two, they should have consultation because, I suppose parking lots has to do with payment of monies too. So anything that has to do with payment of monies, whether it is collected by a meter or whether it's collected on the basis of a lot with persons going around and collecting, because that's what is going to happen. If you have a parking lot, there's no equipment there. Somebody has to go around and collect the money manually. Am I correct?
Not in all cases.
In the case in Guyana, what about our case here? What is the model that has been floated? Is it clear? I'm asking. Well, all right, you don't know. But in either of the two situations, there are two important factors here. One, there must be broad and wide consultations, particularly with the citizens of Georgetown, and the consultation must be public, like town hall meetings, and then they must publish what came out of the consultations so that others who have no interest in going and listen to a lecture should hear. And then when it comes to the collection of money, we have to know how that is going to take place also. Because if a person is going to walk around with a receipt book, we all know, what can happen in the course of those type of activities.
Can I get you clearly? Let us assume that there is consultation.
Huh?
Let us assume that there is consultation and there is approval. Then there should be no problem.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that. You're running ahead of me. I am saying that in either of the two models, there must be wide. We don't know what will come out of the consultation, so I would be being rather presumptuous.
I'm saying if there is approval.
No, I don't want to get into ifs and buts. I don't want to get into ifs and buts or into speculative, scenarios. First, let the consultations proceed. Let the voice of the citizens be heard. And then after that, when we reach that bridge, we will cross it.
So, Mrs. Stapleton, sorry for that, I go back, Dennis. The NDCs in PNC controlled areas, are they being funded or are they in the same boat as the other NDCs?
We are not paying attention to that. What
No,
we are paying,
I mean,
what we are paying attention to are the NDCs where the PPP councillors are in the majority and where monies are not being released as a result of ministerial approval for development to take. Remember, we campaign in those areas, We campaign in those areas, so we have a vested interest to make sure that our constituents who voted for persons on a PPP slate, whether they're civic or they were PPP, so long as they voted on a PPP slate, we have a vested interest in ensuring that what was promised to those people are fulfilled. And therefore, we are giving the necessary backing to our NDC councillors to press for this to be done.
That's selfish.
Is that counterproductive to the plan to win new strongholds?
That is another matter. I'm not dealing with that now. That's another matter. Let the minister communities deal with that. I'm talking on behalf of the PPP, which is a political party representing a political interest in this country.
But your PPP councillors in those areas that might have been won by the coalition and what have you, don't they report to you? Don't they say what's happening?
Comrade, some of these areas are mixed areas. I don't know, we're trying to create, Chinese walls around these places. Some of these places that we've won are mixed areas,
Yeah.
ethnically.
But you ain't getting the money, I talking about the money. You
Yeah.
got these people, the coalition might be in the majority, and want your councillors on this body
Mhm.
saying to you whether the body getting money or whether they
Why I think I'll prepare a statement?
I know why you prepared a statement, but
The,
you're not
the,
sure.
the reason behind the statement is because of the representation that has been made to the party by our councillors in respect to this matter,
No, your councillors
plus our outreaches as well.
in areas won by the PPP. That's
Yes,
what
in
you said.
areas won by the
What you're
PPP.
asking about, what about your councillors and those NDCs that weren't won by the PPP?
We don't know if they have that problem.
But they're telling you, your people are telling you nothing?
We don't know whether the fact that we have not been told anything, the fact that we have not been told anything, it appears as though they're getting their money.
Or your councillors just happy with whatever is happening?
No, man, listen. If quite the opposite is happening in those PNC controlled NDCs or RDCs, why should there be an issue? I mean, for the respective NDC or RDC, not for me, I'm talking, not for the PVP, I'm talking in relation to the NDC or the RDC to whom funds are being released because they are PNC controlled.
But you know of any?
This statement here was prepared to talk about those that are not getting any. When you write in your article, I would suppose you would do your necessary check it to see what's happening all around and do the composite analysis.
All right, let's move on. Any other question?
Yes,
And along in age, you can use it. Just want to go back to a question that Dennis asked about on the parking meter system.
Mm.
Last Wednesday, I think it is, Minister Harmon said that the contracts, I know that you said that you were in favor of either the parking or the meter, whichever one that you.
No, I never said I'm in favor of anything.
No, you said you're in favor of consultations
Oh,
on the two.
Mhm.
I'm saying Minister Harmon said last week that the government is reviewing the contract. That's between Ministry of Finance and the Attorney General Chambers. Is that a welcome sign for the people?
well, I read something where Mr. Anil Nandalal questioned that. I saw Mr. Nandalal in an article question that, and he's saying something to the effect that it's illegal for them to pull a contract, the central government or the Ministry of the Presidency pull a contract out from the City Council to review it. What's really going on?
For Mr. Nandalal?
What about if Chase Green asks for a cabinet paper for her to review it in relation to how it impacts on the City Council jurisdiction?
What if Nandalal?
No, what about that one?
I don't know, but Nandalal got some legal opinions that has run people into trouble.
Well,
For
so far
example,
this one hasn't run into any
That
trouble.
one, but the other day when he talked about fake audit people doing some fraudulent thing with fuel supply.
It ran him into trouble? In what way?
Nearly run me into trouble, nearly
You.
take a lawsuit, and we
You?
quoting Nandalal.
Yeah, well, it's
So
not...
I can't trust the judgment.
Okay, well, let's deal with those things on an issue-by-issue basis.
Yes, Dennis.
Mr. Roy, two quick questions here.
Hmm.
To what extent is your party support suspension of Venezuela from the OAS? And secondly, what are your thoughts about the
Hold on a minute. You see how you're framing a question? Listen to the words. To what extent do we support expulsion of Venezuela from the OAS? To what extent do we support? You know, implicit in that question. That's a loaded question. That's a loaded question. To what extent do we support? As though we are supporting, but to some extent.
What do you support?
I would like to know, because there was a general council meeting of the OAS some time ago at the OAS headquarters in Washington. I would like to know how the government of Guyana voted in respect to that resolution before they went to the OAS General Assembly in Guatemala. Maybe we should find out that.
What the party, do you support suspension?
We don't support the suspension of any member from the OAS. We don't agree with going back to what was done in order to expel Cuba in the 1960s from the OAS at Punta del Este in Uruguay. We never supported that. All issues must be settled on the basis of discussions, within the organization. It must be settled through dialogue and debate.
If those fail.
Well, if those fail, then we come to the bridge, we'll cross it. But I mean, we can't be too presumptuous and say, well, if it fails, we're going to do X, Y, or Z.
And your thoughts on the GRE shake-up?
Well, I don't have enough information. And I don't usually go counter newspaper reports.
Next. Any other? There's no other question.
Sorry. Can we say about with Nigel Damla was settled with the party?
If it was settled in the party,
Yes, party.
Nigel Darwin had a problem with the party.
No, with the party. I mean, like the issue of the illegal gun that was through the lottery.
I will refer to the PPP campaign slogan in 2015. What's in the cup stays in the cup.
Thank you all very much.